Hey, YOKE family, Jonathan here. I'm here with one of our friends, Eric Minton. Eric, for those of you, those in the audience who might not know who you are, why don't you take a few minutes and introduce yourself? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Hey, y'all. I'm Eric. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I am also an ordained Baptist minister. It's a fun combo at parties. I have a private practice that I share with my wife, who's also a marriage and family therapist. It's called Minton Family Therapy. I usually work there a couple of days a week in private practice, and then I spend the other 4 days working at the home of the Bobcats at Central High School here in Fountain City, where I do individual and family therapy with students there.
And how has this kind of the COVID-19 pandemic, how has that affected your work?
Well, all of it's in this format. I only meet with people over the phone or through my computer. And so that has created its own difficulties. For myself personally, when I'm not doing this job, I'm also parenting my son and expected to give him a full smattering of educational and enriching activities in a 1,600 square foot house. So, knowing that that's what I'm experiencing, and then hanging out with all the people that I work with, that's a significant thing that's happening to us. So naturally, even the medium itself is different right now.
Well, I know you're a fan of YOKE. You're a fan of what we do, and we had you come and speak at our leadership summit back in January. So all of our leaders who were there are now fans of Eric Minton as well. We had you on YOKE Live. I don't know, what was it, a couple weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And you and I have kind of been having this conversation about kind of the mental and the emotional health aspects of kind of the anxiety of the COVID-19 pandemic and kind of worrying about our health, worried about our economy, and all at the same time kind of being isolated and not being able to interact as much with the people that we love. And so we wanted to just kind of get your thoughts for our viewers, just to kind of talk about how we can take care of ourselves and take care of others during this time.
Yeah, and those are really good questions that I think right now they're great for us to ask, because we do have both more and less free time than we're used to. And so this is a great time for a lot of us to kind of spend some time thinking through what we're doing, how is it impacting us regularly, and are there some things that we might tweak or change in light of the COVID-19 restrictions that are keeping us in our homes? And are there some things that we want to hold on to that we've picked up along the way? So for me, when I'm thinking about how to be most helpful right now with folks that I'm seeing for individual or family work, or people that I'm just interacting with that are friends and family, the first thing I think that's most important is to notice what you are experiencing. I think typically what happens with a lot of the things that get labeled depression, anxiety, any other kind of psychological diagnostic criteria that you Google on yourself in the middle of the night when your chest hurts. Dr. Google is great at answering all your questions if the answer you're seeking is you're going to die. And so that only ramps up after midnight. But speaking personally, but what I like to do instead of that is to first of all,
you have a therapist nearby though.
Yeah, I do. She won't see me though. I keep asking. But one of the most important things that I think a lot of us do is that we bring that kind of diagnostic language into the room, where even people that I'm seeing sometimes for the first time are giving me a battery of symptoms and diagnostic criteria that they've assigned to themselves. And then my first thought is, yeah, but what is that like for you to experience that? How does that impact what you're going through? And so for us, like sometimes right now, it's just important, like, what are the feelings that I have? Like, I know I call it anxiety, but like, what is that? What am I anxious about? And so I would say the first thing is just kind of paying attention to it for a bit. It's a little bit like my son right now, who's 5. And if I don't initially respond to the first 13, dad, it just gets louder at a certain point.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, why are you shouting at me? And then I realized, oh, I should have just asked and responded the first time you said this. I'm really sorry, son. Our bodies kind of work the same way. Right now, the idea that you would be totally yourself in the midst of a global pandemic where you are trapped in your house is ludicrous. That you would be living your best life right now. That doesn't make any sense. So first thing we have to do is just notice what we're experiencing. Maybe it is anxiety. Maybe it is depression. I don't know, but we have to know what it is. and like what it's doing to us physiologically and what it's doing to us psychologically. So just studying it for a bit, I think, is the first step. And then the next thing I would tell people is empathize with it.
Mm.
Notice what it's asking of you, because for a lot of us, we hear words like anxiety and depression and we get really scared, like something's wrong with us, that we have like a loose hose in our brain.
Yeah.
And oftentimes in our culture, we're taught to immediately suppress this or deny it or not give it any kind of air or oxygen or listen to it at all. It's lying to us.
Mm.
Or we need to immediately medicate it because there's something biologically wrong with us. And for me, I just haven't found that to be very helpful.
Yeah. I think
So yeah, go ahead, Jonathan. Sorry.
I think that for those of us who are people of faith, sometimes it's even worse because we think, oh, that's a lack of faith, or it's doubt, and we shouldn't be experiencing that. We just kind of try to suppress it, push it aside.
And it's not altogether Christianity's fault. I think that a lot of us are taking the ways in which our faith understands that we're not supposed to fear, or that we're supposed to be courageous or strong-willed, or that we're supposed to have the operate with the power of the resurrection in light of Easter. And these things are accurate. But at the same time, I think we have to keep ourselves in mind that we're also operating from a culture that is interested in the anxious pursuit of happiness at all costs. And so sometimes what ends up happening to us is that in that pursuit, we're very often minimizing our body's check engine light. And I think that several mentors of mine that have been very instructive in my own work as a therapist have taught me that depression is less of a clinical diagnosis and more of a body's noticing that what you're currently experiencing and trying to live through is not entirely humane, that you're trying to survive in an uninhabitable landscape. And that depression is kind of the first symbol or sign that your body can't do it anymore. It's uninterested in it. And that if you don't pay attention to it, the engine's going to start smoking, and it's going to ask you to pull over to the side of the road.
Right.
So I think for me, that's the first thing is just noticing what's going on with you. Don't label it anything, just pay attention to it. Right. Second thing, empathize with it. What does it want for you? And then very often with depression and anxiety, they're not these, like boogie men and women. I'm equal opportunity. They can be boogie women. But they're these things. Anxiety is a tool. And gosh, it's really helpful if you're in the middle of the street and there's a garbage truck coming at you. I love anxiety for that. Right. It's terrible at solving complex problems right now. It's not very helpful at that. It can't even grocery shop effectively, but it's good for keeping you alive. And so I think right now it's the first thing we have to notice with all these things is that like they want humans to stay alive, these experiences that are happening. And they're just going about them in a way that's chaotic and fragmented and scared. And so the worst thing we can do is ignore them. I think paying attention to them for a second and asking us, how are these things trying to be helpful for us and aren't, is a good kind of second step there. Does that make sense so far? Sometimes I don't make sense. So I just like to check in.
Yeah. What's next?
Okay. Yeah. And so then once you got those two things, I think then really spending some time with what's actually true. Like what's true with me right now in this very moment, not like what's going to be true 5 years from now, or what's going to be true 5 days from now, or when's this shelter at home order going to be lifted, or all of these things that are far outside of our purview or control. It's no, like what's true for me? Who am I connected to? What am I doing now? What am I doing with my hands? How much time have I spent outside? How much time have I spent looking at a screen? How much time have I spent talking with loved ones, whether on the phone or FaceTime or via Zoom? What have I been doing for my community? What's been taken away from me that I miss? Really taking a battery or a full accounting of like what's actually going on with you right now. Like what's true about you? Because the truth might be, and I think this is where therapy sometimes gets a bad rap, is that sometimes people think when they go see a therapist that a therapist is going to tell them, oh, just tell yourself everything is going to be all right. It's not very helpful. It's not terribly true, and people don't believe it. But I do think what oftentimes when we feel or experience the symptoms of depression and anxiety, what we find out is that the things that depression and anxiety tell us about who we are as people or about our sense of safety in the world, some of that is accurate, that we're undergoing a global pandemic and we're trapped at home. That's true, and pretending it's not is a lie. But that we're completely alone and cut off from people, that no one cares for us, that we're unloved, that we're ignored, that we don't have any value, that we're completely out of control. Those things are inaccurate. But if we don't first listen and notice what's happening to ourselves, we don't know kind of what to speak truth to first. If you don't know what you're afraid of, it's difficult to then determine why it's irrational. And so that's what I usually like to tell people. The third step is just paying attention to what's actually true about you right now. Who are you connected to? What's real about your situation, even if it's hard. And I think that then that leads us to the fourth step, which is what's the next right thing?
Mm.
Because for us, I think sometimes it can be this experience for um, so many of us that we get overwhelmed by the bigness of the problem. And when I spent time working with a codependency support group in one of my first internship placements in graduate school, one of the things that they taught us when we're working with people that are coming out of addiction is that sometimes when people would get sober, they would become overwhelmed by the bigness of the problems that they had kind of awaiting them from years of being addicted to substances. And so then the bigness of the problem and their inability to immediately fix it would then send them right back into whatever addiction that they were experiencing before.
Yeah.
So for us, I think that the problems right now kind of have a similar role.
Right.
And so what we want to try to do in that moment is spend our time not what's the next right thing 5 days from now, or 5 weeks from now when things may or may not open back up, or 5 months from now when things may or may not open back up. We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
But I think it's what's the next right thing 5 minutes from now?
Mm-hmm.
Is there someone we need to call? Is there someone we need to be connected to when the anxiety is noticing that like I feel trapped? I feel like I can't get outside. I feel like I can't get enough air. I feel like I can't get my head around what's going on. That's when it's time to go for a walk.
Yeah.
Because the next right thing is to take a walk. Or when we're feeling alone and isolated and ignored, and we're getting really down, and we look at the screen and the screen sucks our souls out. And then we think to ourselves, gosh, I'm really depressed right now. It's like, what does your depression want for you? How's it trying to be helpful? It's like, oh, it wants me to be connected to people. I feel really alone. It's like, oh, well, then that's when we actually have to use our screens for good. So I think spending some time, first of all, noticing what's happening to yourself, noticing what it wants for you, like what it's scared about, noticing what's true about who you are as a person and what's going on in your actual life and not on the news. And then noticing what's the next right thing for me. And I think sometimes it's nice to have that kind of grounding element for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. I love that advice, just doing the next right thing. And, like you said, that might be getting out of bed. It might be something simple like, I'm going to take a shower and get dressed today, because so many of us are just kind of stuck in the house. But, making a phone call, checking on a friend, checking on a family member, that's all such great practical advice. I know, you're obviously doing a lot of therapy, teletherapy. What about any advice you have or resources that you know of for people who might kind of be struggling and need somebody to talk to at these times?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this the first time when we did our live stream. There's a couple of really great options. Right now, almost everyone, if they're seeing people in person right now, you need to report them to the authorities. But that's a joke, but really they should be seeing anyone in person. But right now, if you go to Psychology Today, which is a website, and there's a classified section, and for whatever reason, it's become a pretty straightforward go-to source in our area for therapists just listing themselves. And so they'll list specialties, they'll list insurances, they'll list rates, they'll list their approaches, they'll give a brief blurb about what's going on for them. They'll usually have a picture of them and their office space. And all of it's a way for people to easily and non-invasively kind of interact with who in my community is offering these kinds of services and what kinds of services do they offer and who might I think to be a good fit for me. And then they give us a really straightforward way of either sending an email directly through that site where it can just say, email this provider right here, or you can even call them in the Psychology Today listing. You'll just click the tab that says call this person, and that will connect them to a secure line that will reach out to that therapist. You'll probably leave a message. And so I would say that's a great place to start. If you don't have friends or family members that you know of that have seen a therapist that they like or trust, I usually tell people fit is the most important thing. So first of all, a good fit is somebody who calls you back. That's a good sign. The second thing is somebody who's willing to be flexible with what you're asking for. So if you call a therapist and you ask for certain things and they say, this is what I do, and they attempt to kind of take what you're asking for and cram it into what they do, that's not necessarily all that research tells us is not terribly helpful for people. So what ends up being helpful for folks is an experience where a therapist pays attention to and listens to what you're asking him or her to do and not do. And then they collaborate with you on finding a good solution together. And then they regularly check in with you about what can and cannot be helpful moving forward. And so I would tell you, just like I would tell anybody else, when you first meet a therapist, gosh, the most important thing for you is to just get a good feel for how the conversation goes. Do you like their energy? Do you appreciate what's going on? Do you feel heard and valued? Those are kind of like those basic life skills that you have developed for years of meeting friends and family members. That's very helpful for choosing a therapist. So it's not this weird kind of difficult experience. It's just, is there a human that makes sense to you, that when you read their materials and you talk with them on the phone or via email, that it seems like this person is a good fit. That's kind of the first step. And the second step is that, gosh, if I can be helpful, I have other source of information that I consult. If you are interested in just asking some questions about therapy or about how it works, or about how to go about getting a referral, or how do I build my health insurance? Like, if you have questions about that, it's kind of a weird time. So please just feel free to send me an email. If you go to my website, it's just www.mintonfamilytherapy.com, and there's a contact us thing at the bottom of every page. And you can just send us an email right through that, and I'll get back to you in a timely manner. But if your question is, gosh, I'm new to this, I'm not quite sure what I'm looking for, or I don't know how this works. I consider myself part of the extended YOKE family, like a weird uncle. So I went to your leadership retreat. It was a great fun. I played basketball at like 1 o'clock in the morning and have been sore since then. So I want to just kind of extend that offer again. Like, if
you're part of the YOKE family.
Thank you. So, so if I can be helpful in that way, gosh, I'd love to be. So, either start with Psych Today. They've got a good list. But also, if that doesn't elicit anything that you're looking for, you feel concerned or confused about something, gosh, just shoot me an email through my website.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your ministry in the community, and tk you for your partnership with YOKE. We're glad to have you.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad to be helpful. Everybody stay well as much as you can, or at least change your pants every so often.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
All right. See you, man.